Hello everyone, I welcome you in the virtual classroom of business environment. Up till now we have completed 3 units and now we are moving towards the new unit, that is unit number 4. The name of the fourth unit is Public Finance. If we look at the name of this chapter, then the name is made up of two words, that is public and finance. Let us first of all understand the meaning of finance. You have started learning the finance since your SY. The basic definition of finance means collection of fund and utilization of funds. In other words, we can say that from where to collect fund and where to utilize the fund, that discipline is known as a finance. Here we are talking about public finance. So when we are gathering the finance and utilizing the finance for the public purpose, then that discipline is known as a public finance. Though public finance is not a subject, it is not a discipline, it is a part of macroeconomics where government collects the fund and utilize the fund for the betterment of the public. So if we say the definition of public finance means the government's action of taking capital and utilizing the capital for the betterment of the population of country, then that action is known as a public finance. Now let us discuss this unit in detail. Public finance. The task of economic stabilization requires keeping the economy from straying too far above or below the path of steady high employment. The task of economic stabilization. What is the task of government? If we say about the role of government, then first of all we need to look at which type of economic system we are having in our country. Basically, we are having mixed economy where the government's intervention in economic activity is as least as possible. By being the outsider of economic activity, it is the role of government to make a stabilized growth of economy. What do you mean by stabilized growth? Stabilized growth simply means the growth should be there at a steady rate. There should not be too upward and there should not be too downward movement. What is written here? The task of economic stabilization requires keeping the economy from straying too far above or below the path of steady high employment. What is steady high employment means? There should be an reasonable growth of economy. Too far above means there should not be inflation and too below means there should not be recession. If inflation is not there and recession is not there, then economy is in a moderate level where growth is there, everyone is earning and everyone's nominal income is increasing. In inflation, what happens? Income increases but nominal income doesn't increase. If we go deep in the inflation, then inflation simply means hiking the price. Due to higher prices, though everyone is earning high income, but their high income is utilized in paying high prices of product only. So by that way, their standard of living doesn't increase. If we look at the figure, then inflation is not showing a growth sign of economy. In inflation, income is increasing, price is increasing, but economy is not growing. So where is the growth? Growth is the absence of inflation and the absence of recession. Definitely recession is altogether and totally a negative position where income is reducing, the prices of every product is reducing and most of the people are losing their job. So in recession, every standard of living declines, and in inflation also standard of living declines. It is only a steady growth rate where the economy grows at a nominal and moderate level. One way lies inflation. Here we have talked about straying too far above. That straying too far above means inflation. and the other lies recession, or below that is recession. Flexible and vigilant fiscal and monetary policy will allow us to hold the narrow middle course. To have a moderate and nominal growth of economy, two tools are there in the hands of government. And which are that two tools? First is a fiscal policy and second is a monetary policy. In our syllabus, we need to discuss in detail fiscal policy, but let us have a brief idea about both the tools at introductory level. Fiscal policy, the word fiscal, you are very well aware of the same. Fiscal simply means the policy related to taxation. It is the policy where the tax rates are decided by the government, and this is totally from the viewpoint of the requirement of government. If the requirement of government will be high, then they will charge higher tax rate, and if requirement will be low, then they will charge low tax rate. Though it is not only about the requirement, with the help of fiscal policy, government controls inflation and recession in the economy. How this is possible, that we will see in detail when we will look forward the objectives and the tools of the fiscal policy. But up till now, you just remember that the role of fiscal policy is for two reasons. One, for the earning purpose of government, and second, for controlling inflation and recession. Then the second tool in the hands of government is monetary policy. What is monetary policy? Monetary policy is a policy related to banking sector. Fiscal policy is framed and devised by government, central government, whereas monetary policy is framed and devised by RBI, the Central Bank of India. The reason behind monetary policy is to control the flow of money in the economy. In inflation and recession, the basic difference is of monetary flow only. In inflation, economy is flooded with the money. There is a huge increase of money supply in the economy. And in recession, the supply of money got shrinkage. It is reduced in the economy. So how to control inflation and recession? In inflation, economy is flooded with money. So to control inflation, the monetary policy is framed in such a way that money flows from market to the bank. So in economy, in market, money flow will reduce and inflation will be controlled. If we talk about recession, in recession the supply of money is not good enough in a market. So monetary policy is framed in such a way that it increase the supply of money in a market to control the recession. In monetary policy, the bank interest rate, CRR, SRR are decided. Cash reserve ratio and statutory reserve ratio, liquidity ratio, these are the ratios are decided by the central government, central bank for the commercial bank in a economy. Means what should be the interest rate provided to the depositor, then what should be the lending rate and the like. So monetary policy is all about the interest rate decided by central bank, and this policy is totally related to banking sector framed by RBI. Fiscal policy is a policy related to tax and framed by central government. The final use, the end aim of both of the policy is to allow us to hold the narrow middle course. See, there is a highway, and if you go to one extreme there is an inflation, if you go to another extreme there is a recession. So what is the task of government? To remain in the middle way, and the middle way is very much narrower one. If you move a bit above or bit downwards, there is an chances of inflation and recession. So by this mean, there should be a reasonable growth of economy. There should not be inflation and there should not be recession. Public finance is a study of income and expenditure of government at the central, state and local levels. In the first slide only we have discussed about the definition of finance, that how to gather the money and how to utilize the money. And public finance, here it has given a simple definition that it is a study of income, how government earns, from what sources government earns, and in which source government utilize the fund, that is a public finance. But it is not only about central government, it is about central government, state government, and local governments. Though fiscal policy are framed by central government, but in fiscal policies the income and expenditure of three levels of governments are included. Which are the three levels? Central government, state government, and local governments. The concept of public finance. Government has to perform certain functions in a country, such as to supply certain public or collective goods which individuals cannot or do not singly perform. What is the task of government? As I have told you earlier, that in mixed economy, the task of government is having a least interference as least as possible. But if government will not intervene in an economic system, then economy will not run. Why? Because each and every product cannot be privately produced. It is not at all possible. Let us take a basic example. Just to run an economy, for having a development and growth of economy, the basic products which are required are roads, dams, and bridges, and electricity. If we keep electricity aside, then basically the most basic facility needed is a road. If we take an example of road, then road is that kind of infrastructure which requires a huge amount of investment. Initially huge investment is required, and secondly, even after investing a huge amount, the return is steady, and that too after so many years, after a long period. And it is not in the capacity of any private people to have to arrange such a huge amount, such a huge investment, and to wait for a longer period for a return, and that too steady. If the return is in a big amount, then also it's fine, but return is also steady, and that too in a long run. So it is not at all in the capacity of private people to provide such kind of facilities, and there comes the role of government come in a picture. If private people will not produce, then it automatically comes on the shoulder of government to produce such basic facilities like education is there, road infrastructure, build dams, and electricity. So many basic facilities are there, and that should be and has to be provided by government. And if you want to produce any product, be it road or be it electricity, the on what basis you can produce? It is on the basis of money only. So it is a picture where government is spending, government needs to spend. But if you can't earn, how can you spend? So just to spend, the role of income comes in a picture. Just because government needs to spend in the economy, they have to earn in a economy. So automatically both of the side come into picture. On one hand government has to earn, and on the other hand government has to expend. And this is the responsibility of government to provide those goods for which it needs revenue. In the narrow sense, public finance is defined as the study of income and expenditure of government. Up till now, we have discussed the public finance definition as the collection of fund and utilization of funds, and in basic and routine words, if you would like to term it, then it would be termed as income and expenditure of government. So it is very basic and very narrow definition of public expenditure. Here we have included only two tools. One is income, that is revenue, and second is expenditure. Though there are four types of tools that we will discuss in detail in the latter part, so that will frame a broad definition of public finance. So in narrow definition, you just remember that two things are included. One is the income of government, and second is expenditure of government. Now let us see the public finance cycle. What is the process of public finance? The first of all, the process starts with the formulation of the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy, as I told you earlier, that it is related to the taxation policy. So government frames the fiscal policy. You know that in a 5-year plan there is a fiscal policy framed by the government, and in budget also every year government decides the tax rates. Then, after formulation of the fiscal policy, by implementing that fiscal policy, government generates revenue, generation of revenue from taxation and other sources. We will see how many other sources are there, but you just remember that after implementation of fiscal policy, government starts generating revenue. After having revenue in the hand, now it is a time to utilize that revenue, that is expenditure of funds through the national budget. In budget, government will give the prediction that in which of the areas they are going to utilize the fund. Then it is written public borrowing. See, the tax revenue is not enough sometimes for the satisfaction of the needs of government, for satisfaction of the facilities to be developed in a economy. In that scene, government needs to borrow the fund. Sometimes they are borrowing from the foreign country, from the foreign institutions, and sometimes government is borrowing from the locally. So that borrowing will be known as public borrowing. Then, when they borrow the fund, definitely accountability raise how they are utilizing the fund, how much is the return on that utilization, and the like. And again, this cycle will keep on going. After utilizing, again, a new need will come in a picture. Again, you need to frame a new policy, then it will be implemented. Again, you are utilizing, again, you are borrowing, and this cycle will keep moving on and on. So that is a cycle of public finance. Now let us discuss in detail what is fiscal policy. As I have told you earlier that the name of your unit is public finance, and there are two branches of public finance. One is fiscal policy and second is monetary policy. But as a part of our syllabus, we need to discuss only fiscal policy. So we are focusing now on the fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is the means by which a government adjusts its spending level and tax rates to monitor and influence a nation's economy. Fiscal policy is a means by which government adjusts spending level. If we talk about the facilities which is needed to be developed in the economy, then there are n number of facilities. The needs and the wish and wants of the human beings are endless. Likewise, that spending, if we calculate, then it will be endless, but we need to control it in the light of how much we are earning, and that earning level will be decided on the basis of this tax rates. So by this fiscal policy, we mean that government adjusts its spending level and tax rates to monitor means to supervise what is the uh, present situation of the economy. As I told you earlier that in mixed economy, the role of government is to intervene in economic activity as least as possible. But it doesn't mean that government will behave like an outsider. It is a part and parcel of the economy, and they need to control the activities of the economy, and for that they need to supervise what is going on in our economy. And fiscal policy is a tool by which a government can monitor the economy. Secondly, to influence nation's economy, not only to monitor. If any deviation is there from the narrow middle gap, from the narrow middle path, if inflation is there or if recession is there, then government need to influence that position. If inflation is there, government needs to control it. If recession is there, government needs to control it. So by influencing inflation and recession, government tries to stabilize the economy with the help of fiscal policy. It is the sister strategy to monetary policy through which a central bank influences nation's money supply. In the first slide of the public finance introduction, we have discussed that there are two tools of public finance. First is fiscal policy and secondary is monetary policy. Monetary policy is framed by the central bank to influence nation's money supply. As I told you that in inflation economy is flooded with money, so monetary policy is framed to reduce the flow of money in the economy. In recession there is a shrinkage of money supply in the economy, so monetary policy will be framed to increase the money supply in a economy. All in all, monetary policy will try to control inflation and recession by increasing and reducing money supply in a economy. And it is a sister strategy of a fiscal policy. Then these two policies are used in various combinations to direct a country's economic goal. Any country's economic goal is to have a growth is to have a steady growth, and that steady growth can be attained with the help of fiscal policy and a monetary policy. What is fiscal policy? Fiscal policy involves the use of government spending, taxation, and borrowing to affect the level and growth of aggregate demand, output, and jobs. Three tools are written here. In above definition, we have seen that two tools are there. One is government's income and second is government's expenditure. Now you just focus that first one is government spending. Spending means government's expenditure, first tool. Secondly, taxation. By taxation, government earns, so this will be known as public revenue, government income. And the third one is borrowing, that is public borrowing. With the help of these three tools, public spending, public revenue, and the public borrowing, government tries to affect the level and the growth of aggregate demand. In inflation, demand is too high, and in recession, demand is too low, but government tries to control the demand and output and the jobs. If there is an enormous expansion of output, then also it will be useless because it will lose its monetary value, and by that way unemployment will be created in a economy. So the task of government, the goal of government is to influence the aggregate demand, to control the output, and to generate employment in a economy. Fiscal policy is also used to change the pattern of spending on goods and services. To change the pattern of spending, any individual is earning and spending, but it matters where they are spending. If you are spending behind the luxuries, then there is no growth. But if you spend behind the productive purpose, then definitely there is a growth. At individual level, this is a true, and at economical level, this is a true. In whole economy, if we are chasing behind the purchasing defense equipment, or if we are moving towards the luxurious product kind of product, then there will be no growth of the economy. Every economy's purpose is to spend behind the productive infrastructure only. So it is used to change the pattern of spending of goods and services. It is also a means by which a redistribution of income and wealth can be achieved, for example, by changing tax rates on different levels of income or wealth. Here it is written redistribution of income and wealth. Automatically, when people earns, then it is a distribution of income and wealth. Say for example, people are doing business, they are doing jobs in the economy, and they are earning. This is the distribution of wealth. But after earning profit and salary, when these people pays tax, by payment of tax, their economical status changes. As we know that three classes are there: rich class, middle class, and poor class. On rich class, government charges high tax, so just because of their tax burden, they may shift to middle class, and poor class is getting tax rebate constantly, so there is constant saving for them, and they may switch over to middle class. So that is what redistribution of income. When people earns, that is a distribution of income, but when they pay the tax and their economic status changes, that is known as a redistribution of income and wealth. And how this redistribution is possible? By imposing and giving tax rebate in our economy. In rich class we are imposing the higher tax, and for poor class we are giving tax rebates. Government typically use fiscal policy to promote strong and sustainable growth and reduce poverty. As we have discussed earlier, that the basic goal of any economy is to have a steady economic growth, steady and continuous economic growth, and secondly to reduce poverty. And there, this is an implied in every objective. If your economy is growing, then definitely poverty is automatically reducing. A policy that uses public finance as a balancing factor in the development of economy is called fiscal policy. A policy that balances your economic position, not to have inflation and not to have recession, that policy is known as fiscal policy. This definition is given by the famous economist Professor J.M. Keynes. There are four tools of fiscal policy, that is public revenue, means governmental revenue, how government earns from the taxes only. So one of the part of fiscal policy is tax. Second is public expenditure, means governmental expenditure. The areas where government spends the fund earned through the tax is known as a public expenditure. The third tool is public debt. As we have seen in the latest definition, three tools are there. Here we have seen three tools are there: spending, taxation and borrowing. So this is the third tool. Public debt means public borrowing. When the taxes income is not enough, at that time government goes for the borrowing, that is known as a public debt. Then the last tool is deficit financing. Deficit financing simply means when government goes for the printing of new money for increasing the money supply in the economy, that is known as a deficit financing. So it is one of the part of deficit financing, but up till now you just remember that printing new money by the government, that is deficit financing. This picture shows very well that the citizen pays taxes to the government in a single penny to the government, and that taxes goes to the government's treasury, and from government's treasury government gives benefit to the citizens. So all in all, money of people goes for the benefit of people only, that is a fiscal policy. So this is all about the introductory part of the fiscal policy, the meaning and the definition of fiscal policy. We are keeping our today's lecture here only, and from the next lecture we will discuss the objectives and tools of fiscal policy. Till the time, have a great day.